All right, moving right along. Okay, we got some general items. We have the financial report for the 6 months ending December 31st, 2017. Got Robin?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight, I will be providing you with a high-level overview of the first 6 months of the financial activities for the general fund and both of the city's utility funds for fiscal year 17-18. The original fiscal year 17-18, let me get my years right, had budgeted expenditures of $41.3 million. To that, thus far into the fiscal year, we have added grant-funded appropriations of $533,000, prior year purchase order commitments of $555,000, and other items totaling $100,000. That brings currently budgeted expenditures to just over $42.5 million. Since revenues are on a cash basis and property tax revenues are not received until February and May of each fiscal year, and we prepaid our unfunded actuarial liability for fiscal year 17-18 to avoid the interest charges with CalPERS, our general fund has a net deficit as of December 31st. This is typical and is not alarming. It merely represents a cash flow issue, and with the city's pooled cash reserves, it does not represent a long-term problem. By the end of the fiscal year, the city will once again have a positive fund balance in the general fund. And just for comparison purposes, the unfunded liability portion of our CalPERS payment was $3,655,000 that we paid all up front. So we would only have owed half of that for the first half of the fiscal year. This is a summary of the general fund top 4 revenues, and the way these slides are set up, the yellow represents the percentage of the amount budgeted that's been received as of December 31st. The gray represents the percentage still remaining to be received by the city, with each line item being 100% to the far left. And you can see that there's not a whole lot of yellow up there. This is a typical pattern for the city at this time of year. Even though this looks kind of odd. Property taxes is just a sliver because it's the cleanup payment that we received in August of last year. We don't receive much in property taxes until the February payment, which we just got and deposited into the city's coffers, with the remainder coming in May. As I included in the written finance report to City Council, our property tax assessed values were up 4.79% for the fiscal year, which exceeded our budget projection of 4%. So by the end of the fiscal year, that line will be all the way over. It will be entirely all yellow. And I provided City Council with some insight as to the details of the assessed valuation changes between commercial, industrial, residential, how many homes were still in Prop 8 status, etc., as part of the written report as well. Our sales tax, I'm providing you with a summary on the changes from the same quarter of the previous fiscal year on both a cash and an adjusted basis. It's important to see the differences. You can see that sales tax is still very, very volatile and difficult to project. It continues to go up and down and up and down and up and down. But at least looking at this, there's only 1 quarter of negative data, so that's really good news for us. The other 4 of our top 4 highest revenue sources, motel surcharge revenues exceeded the 25% expected because we've only received the first quarter as of December 31st because there's a delay in the reporting of those. Staff fully expects that by the end of the fiscal year, those also will meet budget expectations. Building permit revenues are at 54.7% of budget estimates, showing the seasonal uptick of development activity in the summer and fall months. Special police services are at 23.2% of the amount budgeted, and business licenses are only at 7.8%. That's pretty typical for business licenses because we send out the renewal notices in January of each year. So those are coming in and being processed by the finance staff currently. In summary, finance currently anticipates that the majority of just city general fund revenues will meet our expectations by the end of the fiscal year. As far as expenditures, the yellow again represents the amount spent to date through December 31st compared to the amounts budgeted. We're at 45.4% of salaries and benefits. I adjusted that amount downward to reflect a half of the prepayment coming out of it, since that's attributable in essence for CalPERS for the second 6 months of the fiscal year. So this is an adjusted amount that's shown here. I compared that to last year's number. We were at 46.6% last fiscal year, so clearly we will have budgetary savings again this year due to vacant positions at the end of the fiscal year. And any savings, though, would be strictly attributed to those vacant positions and wouldn't be any ongoing savings for us. Total general fund expenditures at the end of December were at 45% of the amount budgeted, and materials, supplies, and services were at 44.9%, so just under the 50% we would expect. In reviewing expenditures halfway through the fiscal year to make sure everything was in alignment with what we were expecting it to be, there was the one line item that I explained in my staff report that was in excess at the present time, and that's related to the city attorney's budget, but it's not the city attorney line item, it's our personnel budget. And we budgeted $64,500. We're already at $73,700 for the fiscal year. So as part of my staff report, I'm requesting a supplemental appropriation of $60,000 to that line item. Those overruns are due to ongoing costs associated with past and current labor relations and employment issues which continue to evolve and require the oversight of the city's employment attorneys. I have one more slide that contains citywide information, not just general fund, before I continue on to the water and wastewater funds. This is a summary of the city's pension liabilities as of June 30th. The actuarial reports came out in August, and I've included a breakdown of the safety plan and the miscellaneous plan with a total here. It shows that our unfunded liability for CalPERS for safety is $35.9 million. Which is an increase from last fiscal year. It was at $27.2 million last year, just to give you a comparison data point for that. Miscellaneous is at $37.4 million, and it's up from $30.6 million last year. So the total citywide unfunded pension liabilities are $73.3 million, and that can be offset by the balance in the Pension Stabilization Trust Fund of $2,471,000, bringing our net unfunded pension liabilities to about $70.8 million. This is the highest level summary overview of our water utility. It includes the operating fund, the capital fund data, debt service, and capital CIP project expenditures. Water fund revenues are currently at 58.6% of the budgeted amount. This is right in alignment with what we would expect given the fact that the summer months have higher billing amounts in July, August, and September. The revenues drop during the winter time and start to grow slightly in the springtime back upwards. We anticipate that through the end of the fiscal year, revenues should be right on target with what we've projected. Capital connection fee revenues are at 70% of the amount budgeted, while operating expenditures are only at 41.4% of the amount budgeted. They're less than budget expectations presently in two areas. Salaries and benefits, there's 4.25 full-time equivalent vacancies, and operation and maintenance accounts across the board throughout the entire budget. I wasn't able to pinpoint any specific line item. It's just generally speaking coming in a little bit lower than what was budgeted. And debt service to date only includes the December 1st interest payment. Principal and interest are both paid June 1st. This is a summary of the city's wastewater utility. Operating revenues, because they're not based upon consumption, are 50.1% of our amount budgeted, right on track with halfway through the fiscal year. Capital connection fee revenues are at 35.6% of the amount budgeted, while operating expenditures are at 45.7%. I looked at the savings there to see what line items and salary and benefits. There were 4.75 vacant positions within the wastewater utility, and specialized equipment, O&M, was less than what was projected and budgeted for the fiscal year. This is a summary of the city's debt coverage analysis. I show this to council at least twice a year. And it's not letting me highlight the negative 0.51 up there of number of years of coverage available. The water fund did go deficit. We were anticipating that it would. It was just a matter of time because the amount of debt service that we pay from capital connection fees for our water fund are insufficient to cover what the annual cost is. I looked at it from a different perspective and added the section at the bottom here where it shows our required ratio is 1.2. So the cash amount that's required to give us the coverage of 1.2 is just under $1.8 million for the water fund and about $800,000 for the wastewater fund. So it shows you what the cash short in essence is by adding the negative balance to that. The shortage within the capital connection fee fund for water is $2,568,000. For wastewater, it's just a little over $2,000. And in the meantime, until development picks up and there's more connection fees collected by the city, the operating fund and all the other water fund sources will help float those debt service payments. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Robin. Bring it back to the council for any questions, any discussion? Or motion to move?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I may add something to that, just 3 very relevant topics from the recent city manager conference were homeless, cannabis, and the looming pension crisis, which sounds, I say the third one, it sounds kind of weighty. It is a weighty issue. It's going to be addressed by cities throughout and counties throughout California. Robin Bertagna, as our finance director, will be working on over the next coming months and year some fiscal contingency plans for our city with regard to how we are going to be addressing the increase in obligation for pension contributions in the coming years, which is just a heads up. We will go on. We're a very fiscally conservative city. So there will be many other cities who reach, I believe, a crisis point where I don't see that looming for us. But it is something that we'll be actively addressing and putting together options for your council to consider. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Back to the council. Yeah.
Robin, you mentioned earlier you are requesting $60,000. Can you go into the details of that, where it's going to be coming from and whatnot?
You bet.
Please.
It would be coming from the general fund's unallocated fund balance and going into the attorney departmental budget for the personnel attorney line item specifically, to handle the amount that we're already over budget in that line item, plus to pay for future personnel related attorney professional service fees.
All right, so the unallocated portion of the budget, so we're not taking away from another program or department to pay for
No,
this.
it's in essence taking it out of our general fund balance reserve, and we have sufficient funds there to cover that cost.
For this purpose? For times like this?
For unanticipated costs, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the supplemental appropriation of $60,000 to the account 1210-62730 professional services and personal attorney,
Okay, do
and
we
also
have a-
note and file.
Second?
Okay, so we have a second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.